So in this week's Phantom Cave video, we're going to be having a look at part 9 in the old The Phantom Comics collection series. So in the first book that we're going to be having a look at is the 2001 annual special. Now this is obviously a cover done by Tessa, which is I think an acronym of another person's name. So we have 10 stories. The first complete printing of the childhood of the Phantom is obviously, this is from one of the eras of the Jim publication eras. And we also have stories like the Shipwreckers, the Planet God of Masua, Uru, Guru and the Witchman, the Golab Pirates, the River Pirates, the Iron Dragon, the Bad Ones, the Killer, and Fluffy. We also have a bonus replica edition, Few issue number 10, a replica of Few issue number 10, 1949. So let's get into this book and let's have a look at some history. So back in those days, we had some new comics coming out. So I think this must have been... Oh no, it's not a comic. It's actually a Telstra sort of card. So I'm guessing those sort of cards would go for quite a bit these days. So let's actually get into the book and actually have a look at it. So it has a annual special contents sort of thing. It features all the stories in it. I think that one was published in the Sly Barry and Lee Falk annual this year. I'm pretty sure that was done in this year. That story was published this year, I think. Yeah, and you can obviously tell it's a Sly Barry story, I reckon. Planet God of Masua. This one's done by Lee Falk and Wilson McCoy. And most of the time when I'm actually... I know I said this in like part 3 of this series. Like most of the time I would like more like... Most of the time I like sort of modern types of stories, or stories that have got like a new sort of storyline to it, or stories that might have been published back in the 1980s or 70s but have been like bring into the modern age, I guess. Most of the stories that I quite like are Sweden stories, so I do like a lot of Sweden stories. But I was actually... a guy on Facebook today or yesterday actually sent me a question, and the answer to that question, the question was, what favorite Phantom story by Lee Falk is one of my favorites? So to answer that question, one of my favorite Lee Falk stories is, I think, The Crooner. Yeah, I quite like, when I first read The Crooner, which was like a couple of years ago, and that was published by a few publications in the Collector's Replica series. I hadn't actually read the story before, so that was quite good. I quite enjoy how Lee Falk scripted his stories. Another favorite story that I like is The Prisoner of the Himalayas. Now, I know in the last couple of years, that story has been getting a lot of attention and a lot of printing done on that story. And I actually late last year, I think in August somewhere, I actually read the full unedited version of the story of The Prisoner in Himalayas. And let me tell you, that story, if you have not read that story, and it is obviously one of the first ever stories written by Lee Falk, and is, I think, one of the top 5 or top 4 first ever publish stories as a newspaper script, even if you're a younger fan and you don't know too much about the Phantom, it's probably best if you read The Prisoner of the Himalayas, you read the Singh Brotherhood story, and you also read what's him to call it? There's this. I can't remember what the story's called, but the story that I'm thinking of, if you're a young reader who hasn't got that much experience with the Phantom, then probably a good story to go start with is the story that was set. The story that basically was based around the 1996 Phantom movie. So yeah, it's basically where there's a gang of female gang, and they run an island called can't think of it. And the two main villains in it is the Baroness and Salah, because Salah plays a big role in that. Both the leaders in that female gang play a big role in that story, and the Sky Bandits. Yes, I've remembered it. The Sky Bandits that you've got to have a look at. You've got to read the Sky Bandits, even if you're an older fan and you haven't really, you've taken a break from reading the Phantom. Please read The Prisoner of the Himalayas if you haven't read it, and Skyband and Singh Brotherhood, and I think you may get a bit of enjoyment out of the Karuna, because they're what a couple of my favorite stories. The other sort of stories I like is very darkish and suspenseful sort of stories, stuff to do with it has high shadows, and quite like this, it has high shadows like that and like that, but it's just spookiness, and it has that sort of awe about it, I guess. I'm guessing this story must be about the childhood of the Phantom or something. Must be something like that. Yeah, that's a famous panel done by Leaf. That's a famous panel from a story done by, I think, Slyberry. May be wrong, but that panel right there is a very famous panel. And that panel right there was, I think, published as a cover, on the 1994 Phantom Annual, I think. And I'll have the picture up on the screen right now of that picture. It's so damn good. I love it. And I've actually got the 1994 Phantom Annual, which is pretty cool. And I'm pretty sure it was the 1994 Phantom Annual. I hope you're enjoying some of these retrospective sort of panels from these stories. I've been with my YouTube channel. Now, you probably won't know this, but I've been doing some research, and we're up to the Iron Dragon, but I've been doing some research about how the viewers and how the audience reacted to part 3 and part 1 of this series. So in part 3, I showed you the interior art of it, but leading up after the part 3, now this is the kinds of stories that I like to see. They're high in shadow, they're very, very damn good, and they're very detailed. These stories actually remind me of how Sweden stories are. They're very high in detail, they're very high in shadow, and not much highlights. If you take an instance, you see all the shadow on there, or you see all the shadow on this panel down here, and you just get a sense that it's so damn good, and this artist is actually Sly Barry. And most of the Phantom sort of fans actually quite love Sly Barry's artworks. Like most of the people that like the Sly Barry era, or you like the Ray Moore or the Wilson McCoy era, or the Tony DePaul and Mike Manley era, or the Jeff Wilgley era. It all depends on how people perceive the artwork and how good they think it is, I guess. And the artwork is always complements the story. That's how I say it. The artwork always needs to complement the story. And for one thing that one of the stories last year, it was in 2020, and one of the stories that I actually quite did not like, I did not like the first part, was the Raven and the Phantom crossover. First part I did not like. Like the second part was pretty good, I guess, but the first part I disliked the first part, and that's what it's rarely that you say it may complain at a story. It's rarely that I complain about a story. And the next comic that we're actually having a look at is The Terrorists. Now, this is another story from the Jim Shepard era. This is obviously a Sweden era story. You can tell because of the artwork. We'll actually say who does the artwork in this story. Is it who I think it is? It's Kari Lepperman in this story, and it's written by, I think, Tom D. Powell. I think it's Tom D. Powell that wrote this story. And a lot of the times when we see stories that have been published in a few publications, we usually see a Sweden story most of the time. A lot of the times when we actually see a Sweden story, you can tell it's a Sweden story because it's usually spooky, it's usually got high in shadow and not much highlights. It's a bit like Sly Barry's sort of artworks. It's high in shadow, and it's not much highlights. And I love Sly Barry art, and I love the Sweden artworks. Sweden stories in particular are one of my absolute favorites. I love reading them because they're so different in a lot of ways. And the next comic of this actual comic coming out is on the 7th of September 2001. Yeah, 2001. That brings some memories back. Next comic we are going to be having a look at is The Slaves, number 1301. It is. So this terrorist comic, this one right here is the next one after this one. Who would have a thought about that? We have an ad for the Flash Gordon serial. And talking about sequels, serials, tomorrow on Sunday at, I think, 5 p.m. Sydney Australian time, PhantomCave will be re-releasing the 1943 Phantom serial, and I'll be having my little promo go up on the screen right now. So PhantomCave will be releasing the new 1943 Phantom serial that back in the old days it was black and white, and tomorrow it's still going to be in black and white, but it's going to be so awesome. I can't wait to see all the responses from it. I've done a lot of promotional sort of stuff with it, and let's get back on with the story. Order before September 15th, 2001 and receive 10% off. Who would know? Yeah. Am I right or am I right? You can tell this is a Sweden story. I love Sweden stories. I've always told people on this channel that I always love Sweden stories. It's so very damn cool. What do we got here? What's the matter, Uncle Dick? You look like you've seen a ghost. That's cool. I love it. That is cool. Some of the times when I actually get like new books into my collection, I don't usually read them. I like to keep them in my collection and basically read them into the future. Okay. So this comic right here, The Ghost House, is pretty damn special. So one of my relatives over at another town, over in country town, New South Wales, in Australia, actually gave me this comic. She found it in a house, she gave it to me, and now I have an extra comic to add to my collection. How good is that? And this type of story, this is what I'm talking about when I talk about the darkness and Swedenness stories. Look how good that is. Can you get anything better than Joan Boyd's? Yep, I am saying this. I reckon this is Joan Boyd's. Let me have a look. If the pages are going to work with my hands. We've got Food Animals. Oh, yep, I was right. Joan Boyce is the artist for this, and Charles Reed Murphy is the writer. Yeah. You can instantly tell it's Joan Boyce because the way he has a type of inking method that no one else quite uses, and is dark shadows and good lines. Dark shadows and good lines. That's what I'm just saying. Because his lines, his shadows, they all go well with the story. Klaus Reed Murphy is a great writer. I'll say that again. He's a great writer. I've read many of his stories, and I think his last ever story will be coming out very soon. But a couple of months ago, Klaus Reed Murphy, just move those books over here. Klaus Reed Murphy actually, he told every Phantom fan that there will be no more Phantom. He won't be writing any more Phantom stories, which is sad because he's a great writer, and he's been a great writer for some time now. Now we have good old Caesar Spadari. That's so good. Shout out to Caesar Spadari, who's not with us anymore. So thank you for basically drawing the Phantom as you would, and thank you for contributing to the Phantom's legacy. This is another Jim Shepard publication era book, and I think last year or this year I actually reviewed this book because obviously I wanted to, and Caesar Spadari, he is a legend in this business. He is an absolute legend. He is. The way he inks his artworks, the way the writing complements the artworks is quite magnificent. I like these types of stories. I love Sweden stories. And I think this must be the last book of this part. So, if you would want to support Phantom Cave Reviews, you can go down below and subscribe to that subscribe button. Smash that subscribe button. And as always, keep Phantom Caving. And if you enjoyed this part series, you can always comment down below. And as always, tomorrow on Sunday, we will be having a look. The grand premiere of the 1943 Phantom serial will be coming out at 5 p.m. Sydney Australian time. So stick tuned for that. And as always, keep Phantom Caving, and we'll see you next time on the Phantom Cave YouTube channel.